So obviously there's a lot of like negative things that come with illness, but I don't talk about the positive things. You know, I've had family, I've had friends, I've had opportunities. No, not that one, but I've had most of the others. And today we had the most miraculous thing because of illness. So I was walking through a store because despite the fact that I grew up in a house that literally heats only with heat, we have an electrical furnace that started at like 55 degrees so the house didn't freeze over if we were on vacation. Otherwise, heat. I spent most of my life splitting wood and the other half tending fires. You'd think I'd be able to use a lighter, but I can only use matches. So I was like, hey, I need to light a candle. I need to buy matches. So I went to like 3 different stores. None of them had. I bought 10 pounds of potatoes and like decided to get steak because I was like, this is what I have. And then I didn't get the steak because it was expensive. But I got the 10 pounds of potatoes, which is going to come into the story later. I'm in the Dollarama because if everything else fails, the dollar store should have, maybe some kind of old-fashioned thing for $1. No, they did not. However, I did find this beautiful, like, dreams journal, which I think is appropriate to go through, and I was like, it's cheap. And then I'm walking away, and my leg seizes, and I was like, well, this is awkward. I'm in the back of a store, alone, and my leg isn't holding my weight. I'm just gonna lean against these things. And I'm just leaning against the thing, and then I find this, like, comic that's, like, for children that's, like, people who paved the way, and I was like, this is cool. I love, like, accessible history for people. So I start flipping through it, and then I was like, wait, is that Wonder Woman? And it is. And I was like, looking through it, I was like, this is actual Wonder Woman? Because it says $3. There's no way they're selling a first edition, or not a first edition, but like a first volume. Like, I read the other thing. Like, this is, Brian Azario. I know who this dude is. And then behind everything, I spot Artemis. If you're not familiar, Young Justice is probably up there in my favorite television shows of all time. I just caught up with season 4, and it's so good. Artemis is my favorite character along with Dick in there, and it's $2. And there's another one. So these are not like the best comics. They're to go along with the television show, and these are her 2 entry things. They're not my favorite comics out of the things. I really like kind of like Homefront ones where we're going into their backstories and Aqualad stuff. I specifically was like having a self-care day, but I was like, I'm not gonna buy books because I always buy books. But these are like not easy comics. Like, comics are very expensive. Like, I keep on looking at like the Hush and like the other ones that are like $40 to buy. Meanwhile, it's like, yes, have this comic. And yeah, it's like small and short and not very good quality and like a show that came out 12 years ago. So I'm not sure why I was sitting here. It is my story about how illness, how my leg clotting up, all of these things, came into this beautiful discovery. On the other hand, I still have 10 pounds of potatoes to lug up 3 stories, and I'm not sure my leg is gonna hold. So we're gonna have an adventure of human triumph. So on the grounds of human triumph, we did have an adjustment. So I got the potatoes, I got the books, I got everything in my hand. I was like limping. It was pretty fun because as I came in, of course, my hip also decided to have like this really intense like sciatic kind of like thing down my back, not my back, like my leg and stuff. So it was like I could walk, but it was definitely like kind of jerky and it hurt a little bit as I was walking. So I'm like stifling with these potatoes walking down, and there's this like 20-year-old guy walking and kind of like staring at me, and I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of like half limping carrying potatoes. Of course you're gonna stare at me. And I was like, hi, and he was like, hi, and then starts like full whole time, and I'm like, I'm walking like a snail, so slow. I hate misogyny. It's just, why? Why? I'm limping with my potatoes and I am not free from the patriarchy. My current read is Spiritual Direction, which is probably one of my oldest books on my thing. I've been reading it for, I don't know, like 2.5 years, but I always get so much, and I've already been like journaling about it. I'm working on a degree in counseling, but I also have a minor in theology, so it's really interesting to see how spirituality comes into that, and I'm really enjoying that. And I hope you had a really great time with this kind of like silly book story adventure time. And yeah, the reason I was having a self-care yesterday and I didn't do a lot of reading this year was because yesterday was the anniversary of 5 years since I tried to take my life, and that's obviously a really hard thing. I was going to find a brownie from my favorite bakery, and then I was going to put a candle in it and celebrate, and that really did help. Like, I find that January tends to be the highest amount of suicides, it tends to be the highest amount of mental health, and I think that remembering that we don't have to erase our pain, but we can also choose to have triumph. So I ended up finding a less expensive roast, and even though it took 7 hours, because apparently it takes 7 hours to cook a roast, and we ate at 11 o'clock at night, I was still able to be like, this is a time when I was having panic attacks and anxiety all week because of this anniversary. And even though my mental health is better in many ways, it's still a really traumatic memory to think about. And I was able to say, I allowed myself to cry and I allowed myself to sit with a candle
and let it burn all the way down, saying, hey, Kira, you have a really long time to have a life. You have a really long time in your life, and your life was almost cut short 5 years ago, but that wasn't the end of your story, and it won't be the end of your story. And I reached out and I made friendships, and I couldn't have imagined my life. My life isn't, better. I have a disability, I have a lot of pain, a lot of things suck, but in that, there is always hope. There is always renewal, and there are always things around the corner. And that's, yeah, in my funny stories and all, I hope that that is something that I can always get past, that in the midst of pain, there is a story, there is a thread, there is a tomorrow. And even when everything feels like it's clouding in, like it did to me 5 years ago, I woke up in a glass room being held with a place where I couldn't go anywhere. And I didn't know how I was going to get out. I didn't know how I was going to face people. I didn't know how I was going to go back to school, go back to work, and all of those things. And it was really, really hard. I don't want to ever estimate that it wasn't. But my story continued. It went on, and it continues now with all of the things that happen. And to me, that's why when I was stranded in a store in the middle of the afternoon because I couldn't walk, it reminded me of that. Because that's how I felt before mentally, and I wasn't able to. And yet, in that, I found my favorite comic. And to me, it was almost like a sign or a metaphor of something that, like, sometimes you need to be stopped. Sometimes you need to be in a really low place. But finding humor, finding light, finding the things, and not erasing the pain. Like, crap, my chronic pain hurts. But finding the joy in there, finding the joy in when you're stuck, is how I've got through the last 5 years, and how I hope to get through another 5 years and another 50 years. Because every day is a day, and tomorrow will come, and it might not be better, but it will be a day with blessings and curses and hurts and sorrows. And thank you. Thank you for listening to my stories and stuff. It's my silliness and my sincerity.